some of the effect of the bump. Let's substitute. We can see that the wheel climbs the bump and bounces into the air. Of course, this jolting is passed on to the platform. We can mount a fairly stiff spring underneath the platform to see how it will affect the jolting. Now, let's watch it in slow motion photography. The traced line shows that we have cut down the jolting because the spring absorbs some of the effect of the bump. Let's substitute a soft spring for the stiff spring that we have been using. A softer spring gives a smoother line because a soft spring is able to spread out the effect of the bump and act as a better cushion against the jolt of the wheel. But when there are 4 wheels mounted in 2 sets, front and rear, as in the motor car, the problem is complicated. Until recently, the front springs of the automobile had to be stiff to keep the axle and front wheels in line. If one set of springs is stiffer than the other set, the stiff set will bounce harder and faster. We can see that this unequal springing, stiff springs in front and soft springs in rear, causes pitching when the wheels strike a bump. The traced line shows this clearly. The only way to eliminate this unequal springing and make the front springs soft is to give them only one job to perform, the job of absorbing bumps. Suppose we replace the bouncing axle with a rigid, immovable beam. Now the wheels can be fastened to the beam by 2 parallel swinging arms. The wheel is pivoted so that even when the arms are tilted by a jolt or bump, the wheel remains vertical and in perfect alignment. And so now, in place of a stiff spring, we can use a soft spiral spring to absorb the jolts and level out the bumps. Since the rigid beam and the swinging arms keep the front wheels in line, there is only one job left for our springs to do. With both front and rear springs equally soft, the platform is held in balance. But now that the front and rear springs are soft, we have another problem. Springs that are soft enough to level out the bumps will compress too rapidly under a heavy shock. And springs that are soft enough to absorb small shocks have a tendency to continue bouncing after they have been compressed or stretched. So to help the springs absorb heavy shocks, we can slow down their action by means of shock absorbers. The shock absorber acts like a brake in delaying the movement of the spring, and it prevents bouncing when the spring is compressed and then released. We can make the severest kind of test to see whether we have a method that will really iron out the ups and downs. We'll use a lot more bumps of different sizes, and we'll run them under our wheels at full speed. Now watch the traced line. The traced line seems to be pretty smooth.
Okay, that's